Before we begin, thank you very much to Ion Reaper for joining my Patreon campaign. Very appreciated. Thank you so much for the support. I'm going to say this. This is not a challenge, but I am now caught up on shoutouts. You guys have been incredible, and I love you. But you're going to run out. I'm going to run out of people willing to pitch in. That just comes with the territory. Like, I'm not expecting it to go any higher than I do. Again, this is not a challenge. But you guys have been insane lately. And I appreciate it so much that you allow me to continue to do this. So, the daily grind will continue. If you support, I produce. So, this image that we saw has come out, and this is one of those interesting super fuzzy potato quality photos that usually leak something really good and early out of Japan. What it seems to be promoting is an apparent 2-pack of the brand new Kingdom Optimus Primal and Megatron in more show accurate colors, more akin to their premium finish toys. And it's kind of got everyone fired up that we're kind of going to see the return of premium finish now going into the Beast Wars line, which of course with Kingdom, there is a lot of hit and miss with that. You know, I don't think, like you look at Rhinox and I go, once again, I'm missing out on a Rhinox that has the appropriate color scheme that I'm expecting out of the character. So everyone's kind of got their fingers crossed that this is going to be like a brand new paradigm. This is going to be a brand new thing that we're going to be able to count on for a while and get like this super cool CG accurate Beast Wars lineup out of all the molds that we've got in the last few years. However, this might just be a one-off thing because, from my knowledge, the premium finish line did not seem to do all that well. Now that could come down to mold choices. You know, they picked the Netflix version of Optimus Prime to do, so maybe in Japan, like that show didn't have nearly as much reach as a full cartoon. So that is potentially a bad direction to go in. They also did the Siege Starscream. And the thing is, I got that Siege Starscream for like $30. Like barely over American retail because it was on clearance, and premium toys out of Japan should not go on clearance, especially when it's a throwback to the days we used to enjoy as collectors. See, once upon a time, it used to be something of a status symbol when your collection had Japanese releases rather than the American ones, or I guess the international ones, because all of the others match the American release except the Japanese releases. In Japan, you were expecting a higher quality of toy. You were expecting more paint apps. Sometimes they came with extra accessories that were skipped from the international version. And more often than not, like there was always some kind of variation to the ones that worked in the way Japan worked it, because in Japan they just had more room in the budget and more freedom to play around. Now, when I say status symbol, that is because they were, of course, more expensive to import your toys. These days, it's not as bad, but the toys are virtually identical to the international release, so what's the point? But back then, if you could spend $30 to get something shipped out of Japan to have a super fancy version, it looked way nicer than the $10 version that was available at Walmart. You have no idea how sad I am to be saying those words. For what a toy cost at retail today, we used to buy the premium ones out of Japan, and it was the glory days of it being a Transformer collector. Now, there's more reasons. There's more reasons for this happening other than just, it's, the Japan just has more budget. Sometimes it's incidental. Like even in G1, like there are very small variations between the releases sometimes. That's just comes with the territory and the production. Sometimes it's, kind of accidental. So, for instance, with Beast Wars Metals, their take on Beast Wars Transmetals, their Megatron had dark black plastic instead of the super dark brown of the American release. And of course, that brown was very fragile. It's technically not GPS. It's kind of a combination of just naturally frail plastic and design errors with that Megatron. But, that's one incidence where it's kind of accidental that the Japanese version is so much better. Both of them are close, but the Japanese one is color-wise just a little bit better. But that's still just like plastic variation, right? Sometimes it is improved in Japan because of things that you can't control in the US, like safety laws. We talked about Henkei Megatron recently, and of course it is far superior accuracy-wise to the Classics Megatron. But one of the big improvements is the fact that the gun barrel does not have to be painted flare orange. That's a US safety law thing Hasbro has no control over. Same reason why he's bright green and purple, otherwise we would have seen him in his classic tones. It's not the only time things like that have occurred that makes the Takara version superior to the American version. Sometimes it's things like safety laws as regards to like poking hazards. It's why the G1 Optimus Prime repaints and even the Masterpiece releases had cut smokestacks for so long, because it's just, in America, that's a poking hazard. If you can fall on it and poke an eye out, it has to get trimmed off. So, incidental things, legal reasons. Sometimes it's not about Takara being intentionally improved over the Hasbro version. It is just a matter of strange preference. In the mid-2000s, especially around the Unicron trilogy, Hasbro was super paranoid about releasing anything with gray plastic. They thought it looked boring. They thought kids wouldn't be interested in it. So for things like Backstop here, he ended up getting mixed with this kind of purplish dark color, as opposed to just the standard shades of gray that he had in the show and that the Japanese version, Saidos, enjoyed. So it's a weird preferential thing that ended up making the Japanese one better, even though the Japanese one's doing exactly what it's supposed to: match the cartoon. Now, it's not necessarily a universal thing. Sometimes the Takara versions do things that can be seen as improvements or not, depending on what you like out of your Transformer. The animated line is a great example of this. All of theirs were done with full metallic paint jobs rather than being matte plastic. Now, I prefer the American versions with the matte plastic because the idea is to match the cartoon aesthetic, which the metallic fails to do. That said, the metallic does look very nice. There's plenty of collectors that enjoy the metallic variations. So that one is all up to you. A big thing here is a lot of times it just comes down to Takara has a better idea for how to paint a toy. And the first time, one of the earliest examples that I can remember of a Takara version specifically intentionally painted to be better than the American version is Metal's Quick Strike. The darker legs of the Beast Mode is one thing, but point your eyes at the head, where not only are there added blue paint apps, but also the eyes have been painted in, whereas the American version leaves the eyes the bare translucent yellow. Little things. That's kind of just the start of Takara realizing we can paint them more than Hasbro can, so why don't we do it and create a superior product? The first one I ever got, and what really made me aware of how different a Japanese version could be, was Galaxy Force Inch Up, one of my very first import figures ever. And to this day, I kind of regret selling it off because it's a really unique Transformer that I would love to see again at some point, whether I'm buying the original or someone, Hasbro gets absolutely crazy and decides to make a new one. But aside from just different color tones, the Japanese version lacks a Decepticon symbol, which is important because in the show, Inch Up, or Dirt Boss, never technically joins the Decepticons. He's only temporarily associated with them. So, important distinction. But he also had, what was big for me was the inside of his legs were painted to match the cartoon model, whereas the Hasbro version left it off because, well, in vehicle mode, it's the underside of the front. In robot mode, it's the inside of the legs. They thought it was not necessary. For some of us, it was. I thought it was a nice little detail. Sometimes it's a matter of what they need. Here in Universe 2, which is kind of like the line as far as like huge differences between American and Japanese releases go, they decided that Dinobot needed to be a Predacon because they were doing Universe 2 Cheetor, But rather than make a screen-accurate Dinobot, they decided to go for a decidedly more evil tone to his colors. So the brown became paler, the gold became more yellow, and the blue became purple. So trying to push this Predacon visual of the character. It never really worked, and it never really looked good to me, but that was Hasbro's idea of pushing him more toward the Predacon side of things, so you had two really popular Beast Wars characters, easy purchase Beast Wars characters, very low risk characters, but you also had someone who was distinctly a Predacon. It didn't work. It didn't work because, of course, it's just not screen accurate. Go over to Takara, and yeah, it's a little bit better. It's a little bit better, actually being colored the way he looked in the cartoon. It's not in this photo, but I will also point out that the sword in the American version, which is just bare translucent orange plastic, is chrome on the Japanese version, so it actually looks like the blade from the show. A little bit of a nice touch. Would have been nice for the American release to get that. In general, Takara always tried to be as cartoon accurate as they could. If Hasbro's was off, they tended to fix it, and that was true all the way up until the last years of them actually doing this. And it carried over to all of their ideals. So let's compare Beast Wars reissues for a second. Now, this is a Sabertron.com image. Thank you very much, because I needed a really clean comparison shot, and pretty much every picture of TJOmega Rhinox is like abysmal quality, and you can't see the differences. But here, yeah, it's pretty clear. Different shades of brown, different shades of green. You can see where there's more attention to the paint detail. Especially look at the chest on the left version. That's the Takara reissue. You can see the individually painted teeth. You can see the gum line painted in. Details Hasbro did not feel were necessary. The blades of the Chain Gun of Doom, they are painted as well. My favorite detail is the forearms. The forearms that, in the show model would have like his beast mode legs on them, have actually had the insides painted to look like the rhino leg. It's kind of amazing. So that was great. I mean, that's a great little thing. They even had the forethought to make sure that the inside of the mutant head was a really dark color, so it kind of blends away and leaves this robot mode head like a little bit more on its own, as opposed to like the gold ears of the American one. Big difference, right? Big one. One of the biggest ones, going back to Universe 2 and the Generations releases. So back in Classics, Hasbro did not have any intention of completing the Seekers. Imagine that. The year is 2006, and Hasbro thought 2 standard Seekers and 1 cone head was just fine. That's plenty to tide them over. No. BotCon did the other 3, which kept Hasbro from doing their own for years, and they eventually caved fan demand to actually produce all 3 Seekers in the Classics mold. But not before Takara beat him to the punch by releasing their own as part of the spin-off of Henkei, Gente. So you had to go to Takara, so you either had to pay exorbitant prices for the BotCon version, or you had to go with the Takara version and, just put up with like a little bit of chrome thrown into your figure, along with it. They loved chrome on their universe figures. I still don't know why Grimlock's has chrome legs in robot mode, but, he does, whatever. So this was a case of just Takara just going, what, we're not going to wait. We're just going to make it. And this just upset fans even more. Like, why does Takara get to do all these at retail, but we, here in America, we don't get to have the rest of them? The rest of the world has to pay exorbitant prices just to get all 6 Seekers? Hasbro caved eventually, but it is kind of one of those things that made people really aware of just what Takara was willing to do compared to what Hasbro could. My personal favorite of all these, we mentioned this before, thank you again, Sabertron, who are the only ones doing comparison photos. Yeah, Vector Prime looks so much better in the Takara release. So much better. Sometimes it's just the little things, like even in this photo, where is the detail? Where is the sculpting on the Hasbro version? Where is all that sculpting in the shoulder pads? Like where in the forearms? Where did it go? It's gone. The white completely hides it. It's amazing. This tradition continued all the way into their Legends line, which was to us Titan's Return, or at least most of the Legends line was Titan's Return. They did a bunch of figures under that line that weren't, but the biggest contrast you could go with is Blur, where Hasbro's all blue version, like all solid blue version, really confused a lot of people because it's definitely not cartoon accurate. It's not toy accurate either. It's almost as if they just decided to just go one straight color so they could get away with as little paint on the toy as possible. You compare that with the Takara version, and it is night and freaking day. That is a beautiful incarnation of Blur. Absolutely beautiful. And keep in mind, like, this isn't even one of the ones they tried hard on. You know, if we go to like another one I mentioned in a recent video was their version of Hot Rod, who not only had remolds to make his chest more accurate in robot mode, but also came with his Target Master. Takara really, really liked going harder than Hasbro. Now, the rule is not always universal, by the way. I just want to point that out. Every now and then Hasbro does do better. I'm going to point out one example, which is their version of Energon Ironhide, which is actually using show-accurate mustard yellow parts for his arms and his legs, instead of the all-gray that Takara went with for their Superlink Roadbuster. Minor difference, but it's interesting that every now and then something leaks out that Hasbro actually had a superior version of. We did a whole video showing all the times that Hasbro, at least 10 times, that Hasbro did better versions than Takara did. It's rare, but it does happen. Now, unfortunately, this tradition has come to an end with, it was Power of the Primes that killed it. Takara started going with what they called a global unification program, like a global synergy program, where they wanted their releases to match all the ones from the rest of the world, which in layman's terms means we don't want to spend the money producing our own versions of the toys anymore, so instead we're just going to take our stock from the international stock. Basically, it's one of the things that I like to point out about, these big companies that we like to talk about here. It is using what is, it's trying to spin a positive from what is ultimately a cost-cutting maneuver, and they're trying to obfuscate that fact, and it's a little bit obvious what it's actually all about. Regardless, it was the death of the superior Takara version until recently with the premium finishes. Do I think they picked the wrong molds, and that's probably why they got a lackluster result? Absolutely. Do I think there is still room for it, though? Absolutely. It's a matter of picking the right toys and coming up with the right color schemes. And it seems like with these Kingdom figures, they might actually nail it, because I'm not going to lie, I'm eyeballing these really hard, and I'm really hoping it is not like a painful price point. I guess we figure out on the 9th, according to this. So, thank you guys for watching in this trip down memory lane. This little bit of nostalgia for what Transformer lines used to be, and how it used to be a big deal if you had the Japanese version of a toy, which today is just kind of a thing. Why'd you spend the extra money for the same thing? I don't know. I liked it better. Happens. But, you know what? Maybe we're getting a return to form here. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you next time. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.